What up, y'all? EJ here.
Seb Money.
Yes, sir. You already know. And coming at you with my favorite video of the week. Our props and fantasy players for the Sunday games. Last week we crushed this video. All of our fantasy players hit. Also...
Except one.
Except one. Who was that?
Brandon Cooks.
No, that was the prop. Fantasy players. Our fantasy players smashed.
Oh, yeah.
Ridley smashed.
Yes.
Mostert scored.
Yes.
Herbert scored. I'm trying to remember my other 1 p.m. But he was good
Pollard
too.
scored.
Yeah, Pollard.
Eckler scored.
Yeah, we were good. But our picks, man, our player prize picks, we went 5 for 6, and Brandon Cooks sadly missed his 23.5 yards in first
receptions. It was a PI. He had a PI, a 40-yard bomb. He was about to catch it. He got dragged down. That's what it came down to for a perfect.
And even after 2 receptions with that PI, he had 22 yards and he had to go over 23.5. So, hit 5 for 6 on this. It's alright, but follow our plays and you will be 100% satisfied. I'm going to have 1 player pop for 1 o'clock. He's going to have 1, then 4 and 4, and then 8 and 8, and same thing with fantasy. Go on.
So, my first prop, Mike Evans, over 50.5 receiving yards. I am surprised it is this low. He had 66 last week versus Minnesota, and he's playing another weak defense with the Bears. Home game as well. Expect him to be targeted heavily. Expect that. Okay? Expect that. So, and then EJ's 1 o'clock prop.
My 1 o'clock prop, I'm going with Derrick Henry over half a touchdown. Derrick Henry. King Henry. How about that? King Henry for over half a rushing touchdown. All right? It could be rushing, receiving, or passing. They have it on there as whatever touchdown. I think Henry gets in the end zone. Raheem Mostert got in the end zone last week, so I 100% think that Chargers defense is not going to be able to stop Derrick Henry. I think you should start Derrick Henry and go over half a touchdown. He is 100% getting in the end zone. This Chargers defense is something I love to target, all right, because they are weak against the running backs, as they have one of the worst linebacking cores in the league.
For my 4 o'clock prop, Brandon Ayuk over 57.5 receiving yards. He had a massive game last week versus a respected Steelers defense.
So he's going to be consistent.
He had 129 yards last week with that Steelers defense. Okay.
He caught all 5 of his targets, too.
He did.
5 for 5.
Rams have a weaker backfield than the Steelers do, believe it or not. Or backfield. They have a weaker secondary. I don't know why I keep saying
defensive backfield.
Yeah. They should light it up. They should light it up with Brandon Ayuk. That's my 4 o'clock prop.
All right, guys. Then, for my 425 prop, I have Garrett Wilson going under 51.5 receiving yards. Last week, he only got 31 receiving yards, and he was playing against Tre'Davious White. Now, he's playing against Stephon Gilmore and Trayvon Diggs. 2 great corners on both sides, not just one corner in Tre'Davious White guarding him. He is not going to have anywhere to go, and he has Zach Wilson throwing him the ball. That Cowboys defense is going to be stopping Garrett Wilson, and he's going to have under 51.5 receiving yards.
All right, my third and final prop for this episode, my Sunday night football prop. This will be a surprise to a lot of people, but I feel confident in this one. Mac Jones, over 234.5 passing yards.
He has 1 good game, and now he's the man.
Well, he's playing a weaker defense this week, and he had 310 passing yards last week with one of the best defenses in the NFL.
It's because he was losing the whole time, but go on.
But Mac Jones, Herbert lit up the Dolphins' secondary last week. He lit it up, okay? Showing they can be exposed. Herbert is a better quarterback than Jones is. Let's not get that mixed up. But Herbert exposed their defense. Their defense could be lit up by anybody because Herbert has a massive game that could give your average quarterback a decent game. And a decent game is over 240 yards for a quarterback, which they could do against the Dolphins. So, yeah, he should get over that. Take Jones. I say that's my fantasy, or my prize pick prop smash for the week.
And they don't have Brian Flores. They're still trying to figure things out on the defensive end.
Thank you.
So, for my Sunday Night Football player prop, I have Tyreek Hill going over 83.5 receiving yards. Man, he had 219 yards last week. So, getting a little over half of that, or less than half of that, is very doable. I don't think he's going to go crazy, but I think 83.5 is 100% doable. I think Tyreek Hill is going over 2,000 receiving yards this year. He's the best receiver in the league. Smash his player prop of 83.5. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain the cheetah.
Got you. All right. Now, going on to fantasy players. I'm going to give you all mine, and then I'll let EJ give all his. Here's what we think for fantasy football, who you should start if you already don't have him in your starting lineup. Which I'd be surprised if you don't have these players in your starting lineup. I'd be concerned about your team. My first one, Nico Collins. He's playing a weak Indianapolis defense. He had 6 catches on 11 targets for 80 yards last week. Versus a better Baltimore defense with 14 points in fantasy. Flex him. He will be a favored target this week. Put him at your flex, not at your receiver 1 or 2, unless your team is that bad. But put him at your flex this week. He's a safe flex for me, unless he gets hurt. But I have him at my flex in one of my leagues. I'm going to keep him there all week.
I'm debating because I have T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, and DJ Moore, and then Nico Collins on the bench. Possibly throwing him in there somewhere.
Might need to. I think he has a good game this week. My next fantasy player for the 1 o'clock set of games will be Jamar Chase. I know. He laid a goose egg last week, okay? The whole Cincy team laid a goose egg last week. Expect him to bounce back this week versus Baltimore, where they gave Houston receivers a big day last week. Baltimore defense let up on receivers on Houston last week. Expect Jamar Chase out of everybody to expose that Baltimore defense.
No Marlon Humphrey, and he goes off against Marlon Humphrey.
Yep. So, Jamar Chase is a boom this week in fantasy. You better start him. Don't bench him because of one bad week. Do not do that. If you do, I lose all respect for you.
You don't bench Jamar Chase.
So, for my 4 o'clock fantasy players, CMC started.
My man.
No doubt.
White Lightning.
Had a massive week last week. Look for him to back it up this week. That's all I got to say about CMC. The Rams' rush defense is not that good this year. Aaron Donald is it. But I think CMC gets past Aaron Donald a couple times and he breaks off loose. My next fantasy player for this hour, P. Ryan. Yep, I said it. P. Ryan on Denver. Playing a weak Washington defense. Yes, I said it. Weak Washington defense.
James Conner had a good game.
Okay. Oh my God, I gotta say this. They let the Cardinals have 16 points. Who's on the Cardinals? Marquise Brown? That's it. James Conner? Sucks. Okay? I don't want to hear it. Okay? P. Ryan is gonna expose this Washington defense this week. Washington almost lost the game to the Cardinals, bro.
So if you have Javonte Williams, do you debate starting him too, or no?
Yeah. Any running back in Denver is safe this week. For P. Ryan, I would say for your top 2 running back spots, depending on who you have, but everybody else at the flex is safe.
Cool.
Sunday Night Football. Here's my fancy players that I love for this week. Oh man, Stevenson. Stevenson disappointed me last week, but I think this week he has a breakout game with the weak Miami rush defense we saw last week against Austin Eckler. They sucked. So, showing they can be exposed. Again, another reason to start him, but I think they're going to give up a lot of yards to the running backs of New England, and I think Stevenson is going to break out. So, start Stevenson at your flex. All these for me are flex players because I think running back 1 and 2s are secure for this week. But Stevenson, a good flex player to have. And with that being said, my final fantasy player of the week, with Aaron Rodgers going down, people are going to be looking for a quarterback. They're going to be looking for one, right?
So let me guess.
My safest bet out of all quarterbacks out there, because Brock Purdy at this point is already picked up, you pick up Mac Jones. Okay.
Knew that was coming. I just wanted to hear you
Mac Jones had 28.8 points last week. Let's not disregard that versus a talented Philly team with a great defense. Okay? Mac Jones is safe as a fantasy quarterback based off of week 1. He played one of the best defenses in the league, and he had a great game. Now, he can be a fantasy starter this year in some leagues. Not all year, but for some select games, yes, and versus this Miami weak defense and having them figure things out still on that side of the ball, you start Mac Jones this week because one of your quarterbacks could be injured this week or is already injured with a lot of people drafting Aaron Rodgers. If you have Aaron Rodgers and you haven't picked up a quarterback yet, Mac Jones is your guy.
Cool. All right, guys. Before we get started, I'd like to show y'all this trade that I got in fantasy football. This guy wants me to trade Stephon Diggs and Calvin Ridley for Raheem Mostert, Odell Beckham, and who's the third guy? George Pickens? Yeah, see, that's not... Come on, man. And I have CeeDee Lamb on this team. I got CeeDee Lamb, Diggs, and Ridley. And this is a Cowboys fan. I'll trade you CeeDee Lamb's ugly behind, but Diggs and Ridley ain't going nowhere. This man's won the league 2 years in a row. Shout out to my boy George. But I ain't going to just hand you a third championship like that. So we are going to happily smash the decline button, all right? And that's a big screw you, buddy. Go finesse somebody else on that one. But now we can move on to helping you guys out. Don't accept a trade like that, all right? Is tip number 1. Tip number 2. If you have Josh Allen, start him with confidence. You probably don't have a better backup quarterback option, but have confidence in starting him this week. He had 4 turnovers last week, was noticeably upset with himself at the press conference and with his body language on the field. He's never dropped back-to-back games of under 10 fantasy points since his rookie year. He had 9 fantasy points last week, depending on your league scoring, but no more than 10. Then, my second start for the 1 o'clock games is Keenan Allen. He had 14.2 fantasy points last week, and he had a touchdown called back, so he should have had more. Also, he led the team with 9 targets. With that being said, he's playing the Titans defense, who Michael Thomas, rose from the dead, and Chris Olave had over 11 points last week. If Chris Olave and Michael Thomas can have over 11 points last week, then Keenan Allen, who had 14 and got a touchdown called back last week, can 100% be in your starting lineup. Next, moving on to 425. This isn't exactly a player, and I don't like saying it, but play the Cowboys defense. Okay? They're playing a worse quarterback. They're playing a worse offense than the Giants. They're playing Zach Wilson, who is horrible. I think he had 1 touchdown last week.
Yeah.
And
his
it was
first
a lucky
drive.
one.
His first drive was a interception.
Yeah. Start the Cowboys defense. They're going to dismantle the Jets and score you a whole bunch of points. Trade for them if you can. Then, my second play of the week is Saquon Barkley. I know it's scary.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people have faith in Saquon Barkley right now, but hear me out. All right? Saquon Barkley's playing this Cardinals team that Brian Robinson had 13.6 points against. Brian Robinson also averaged 3.1 yards per carry. That's not that great, okay? Saquon Barkley is a substantially better running back than Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson, once again, scored 13 points. That means Saquon Barkley should be able to give you at least 13 points. Put him in your starting running back. this week with confidence. Next is Sunday Night Picks. I got to go with Tyreek Hill, man. If Tyreek Hill is playing Sunday Night Football, he is my fantasy player. Mm-hmm. He's going to score points. Tyreek Hill might be the number one fantasy player on the year. Wouldn't be surprised. I think he's going over 2,000 yards. He says it. And when Tyreek Hill wants something, he gets something. All right? So Tyreek Hill is my first. Not saying he's going to get in the end zone, by the way. Not saying that. But I think he accumulates a lot of yards, and he gets his good amount of catches. He's going to get a big player, too. It's Tyreek Hill. Can't stop him. Yep. All right? So I say play Tyreek Hill in this fantasy matchup. And another guy I say to play is Kendrick Bourne.
Okay.
Kendrick Bourne looks like the number one receiver on that Patriots.
Also, Devontae Parker was out last week, so we don't really know who our number one receiver is, if I'm being honest. But he did make a fair
He just looks so much faster, and so much, his cuts were so much cleaner, and his routes were so much cleaner than everybody else.
And he had a great offseason. He had a great offseason, like, in the gym, on the field, overall. He had a great offseason this year.
I would pick up Kendrick Bourne. I think he's the number one option
in
the passing attack for this Patriots team. Tyreek Hill and Kendrick Bourne are my receivers.
Would you start Kendrick Bourne at a wide receiver 2 spot or just a flex?
Flex. No, he's not wide receiver 2 yet.
We're
in week 2. There's not much injuries.
I got you. I just thought I'd ask that because, some people
most likely picked him up on the waiver wire.
Some people might start him at the receiver 2 based off of that take because if your team is that bad, man, again, I pray for you, but if you're starting Kendrick Bourne at your wide receiver 2, man, that's tough.
Yeah, but you better have Austin Eckler and
Kendrick Bourne is kind of Kendrick Bourne is kind of in a Nico Collins position.
He's getting volume.
A really high flex player right there. So I like that. All right, guys. Our next episode will be our Game of the Week episode coming up between the Chiefs and the Jags this week. As you may have noticed, we didn't include the Chiefs and the Jags takes in any of our Sunday predictions. But that is our Game of the Week. That'll be coming out. And then after that, Monday Night Football. So we'll see you guys on those bits. Peace.